It was a Friday night, and my friends and I all gathered around an abandoned mental asylum. We all wanted to explore the building at night. Apparently, some of the rumors were of people who went in the asylum and they never came back out. People also have seen silhouettes of other people standing in the windows, overlooking the street and people passing by. All four of us decided to walk to the back of the building, because that was where the known entrance was located. We hopped over a 4-foot fence and walked to the back door. Since the door was locked, we found a broken window on the second floor. After looking around, we found an old broken ladder, so we used that to climb inside the asylum through the broken window. Once inside, we put on our flashlights because it was very dark. The main hallway was connected to many doors that had numbers assigned to them. Most of the doors in the asylum were either broken or falling apart. After a while of exploring, we heard a loud sound coming from the 3rd floor. It sounded like something falling and hitting the ground. Since we were all adventurous at the time, we decided to go upstairs and explore around to see what made that sound. Once we got upstairs, we shined our flashlights around the long hallway. At the very back of the hallway, we could see an old woman in a white dress sitting down on the floor facing a wall. We all turned our flashlights off in hopes that she did not see us. I started to back up, constantly looking into the dark hallway. When we reached the stairs, my friend decided to put on his flashlight once again. When he turned his light on, we could see the same old lady standing 10 feet in front of us. I screamed, "Run," as we all sped down the stairs. After a little while, we could not find the exit to the asylum, until we realized. We went down to the basement instead of going to the 2nd floor. That was when it hit me. We were lost in the dark asylum with an old lady chasing us. We started walking back up the steps to the 2nd floor. My 3 friends were first, and I was the last one. Then suddenly, I felt something touching my shoulder. I quietly turned my head around, and I could see the same old lady staring at me, with her hand on my shoulder. I was so scared I almost passed out, as I ran with my friends out of the broken window leaving the asylum. This was by far the scariest day of my life. It was getting towards the end of the night, and I was finishing up my night shift at the pizza place I was working at. By this time, it was already 11:30, and the store would close at 12. While I was packing up, I heard the front door to the store open up. Usually people don't come this late, so I was caught off guard. I even glanced at the clock, which said 11:56. There was 4 minutes till I closed the place, so I was not gonna serve him anything at this moment. The man walked up to the counter and ordered 2 pepperoni pizzas. I kindly responded telling him that the store is closed, and that I can't serve him the pizzas. I feel like this startled the man, since his face immediately turned into an angry looking stare. He tried asking again, but nothing changed. After a little while, he began cursing me out, and he walked out of the store slamming the door. After I saw his car pull out of the parking lot, I locked up the store and drove home. At my house, I just went upstairs and went to bed, because I was very tired. Sometime in the middle of the night, I heard a faint car door open. Not even a minute later, the doorbell rang. I got out of bed, feeling very annoyed. I walked downstairs and peeked through the window blinds. There was no one there, but I could see a car parked in the driveway. This woke me up because I got scared. I looked through the window at the front lawn. There I could see a man standing in the bushes holding a baseball bat. I knew it must have been the same guy from the pizza place. I also knew that I was about to get jumped, so I backed up from the window and ran upstairs. At that exact moment, the man threw a large rock, shattering my window in the living room. When I got upstairs, I locked the door and called the cops. Then I took out the gun that I had in the closet in case anything happened. After a few minutes, I could hear the man outside my bedroom door. "I know you're in there," he said. I screamed at him to get out of my house because I called the cops. This did not work because he started hitting my door with the baseball bat that he had. At some point, he created a big enough hole in the door to reach the handle. He slowly opened the door. That was when I screamed again, telling him that I have a gun and that he needs to leave now. Instantly, the man ran back downstairs and left my house. When the cops came, they searched the house and found nothing. To this day, I am forever grateful for being alive after that experience. This happened a couple days ago. It was around 9 p.m. I was in my backyard fixing something in the shed. My house is located near an old building. I'm not sure whether the building is abandoned or not, but nobody ever seems to go inside. Well, either way, I kept on hearing noises coming from inside the building this particular day. Since all of the lights in the building were turned off, I decided to try and get a better look by jumping the fence. After I jumped the fence, I still could not see anything, but I decided to take a picture of the building. When I jumped the fence back over to my house, I looked at the picture, and in the corner of one of the doors, you could see a man standing there, staring at me. This scared me, because I did not think anyone was living in that building, so I just went back to working on my shed. After a little while, I heard a door open to that building, and the same guy came walking out. He was also holding a trash bag in his hand. I was very confused at this point, whether someone actually does live in that building. Not even a minute later, the man disappeared into the darkness. 5 minutes later, I started hearing a tapping sound coming from the fence in my backyard. I slowly turned around and saw a head looking over the fence staring at me. This scared me, because at this point it was late in the night. I called out to the person looking over the fence and told him to leave. There was no response. Also, the head was so still. There was no movement. That was when I realized that there was a man crouched down, looking through a hole in the fence staring at me. The same man was holding a stick with the head that was staring over the fence. At this point, I decided to yell at the man to leave. I picked up a rock and threw it at the fence, in hopes of scaring the man. Then I ran up the stairs and into my house, locking all of the doors and windows. After I was done, I looked back outside, through one of my back windows, but this time, the man was gone. I started to get really confused and scared, since the strange man that came out of the building also was holding the head that was on the stick. Either way, after a little while of thinking, I decided to call it a night and get some rest. I don't remember the exact time, but something woke me up in the middle of the night. I got up and looked around, towards the sound coming from the window. That was when I saw the scariest thing of my entire life. The same guy was at my window, using the head to tap on the window aggressively. I quickly shut my blinds and called the police. Later that night, when the police showed up, they searched the entire house, and they could not find anyone. I also told them about the guy coming out of the building, and showed them the picture of the guy in the building. When they searched, they did not find anyone or any traces of any murders. This was the most horrifying experience to ever happen to me, and I'm glad that the man had never returned to my house again. This happened when I was 16 years old. I recently just got hired for my first job, working at a grocery store near my house. From the minute I walked into the store, something felt off. At the time, I didn't really know what that feeling was. That first day, I was able to sit around and watch one of my coworkers explain everything that I am responsible to do in a day of work. So later that day, when my shift ended, I left the store and started walking home. As I was walking home, I thought I heard the sound of walking footsteps behind me. I decided to turn around, expecting some random person to be walking behind me, but there was nothing. After that, I continued walking to my house. The next day, I went to work for my second shift. This time, my training session was over, and I was starting to complete all of my tasks on my own. During my daily shifts, I have to go in the back room to fill up the cooler. This is the old fridge area, where all of the frozen items are kept. For some reason, as I was filling up one of the sections, I just got the random feeling to look behind me. Good thing I did, because I saw a man standing in the doorway to the back cooler. He was just staring at me. His wide expression and grin sent shivers down my back. "Can I help you?" I asked. There was no response. Then suddenly, the man just turned around and closed the door, leaving the back. This startled me, because no one is allowed in the back cooler area. After my shift ended, I started walking home, once again. This time, I remembered about my experience from last night and decided to be extra careful about my surroundings. Surprisingly, when I turned around, I saw the same man from the store earlier, peeking around the corner from one of the buildings. I knew he must have been following me. I didn't know if I should confront him or not. At the time, I was a little scared and decided to just run home. I also didn't tell my parents about the experience in the store and about the same guy following me from work. As I was laying down in my bed that same night, I started to really think about that first day I entered the store. As I was getting trained by my coworker, I remembered the same guy in the store, just staring at me. As I am starting to put the pieces together, that guy was targeting me from the first day, and I have no idea why. That same night, I decided to call my boss and quit my job. This is where things get crazy. The next day, I was walking with my friend by the same grocery store, and I could see a bunch of police cars parked outside the store. Just then, a police officer walked out of the store, holding the same man in handcuffs. I later found out that someone was killed in that store. To this day, I wonder what would have happened if I did not quit my job that day. It was a normal Friday night. I was outside at my cousin's house and we were playing soccer. My cousin and I always like to 1v1 in soccer in order for both of us to improve and get better. Around 20 minutes later, we finished our soccer game and we decided to head down to the basement. The weather drastically changed, so it was starting to get cold outside. We decided to play a game of table tennis and then chill and watch a movie. After the game of table tennis finished, we put on a scary movie on Netflix. During the movie, both me and my cousin heard a loud knocking sound coming from one of the basement windows. This scared both of us a lot because we were in the middle of watching a scary movie. We paused the movie and looked outside the window to see what possibly could have made that sound. We could not see anything. I decided that we should continue watching the scary movie and forget about the sound. After a little while, we heard one of the scariest things in my life. It was the laughter of an old woman coming from the basement stairs. I jumped in fear, and both my cousin and I ran to the stairs to see what that was. To our surprise, we could not see anyone. This time, my cousin told me that nobody was home and that we should go outside and check if anybody's trying to break into our house. So we did. We opened the basement door into the cold night and walked around. Since everything seemed normal, we walked to the front of the house to check. Everything was normal. We decided to go back to the basement, but on the way, I saw that my bike flashlight was turned on. I know for a fact that I turned that light off when I arrived at my cousin's house, so this terrified me. Then we went back in the basement. We locked the door and waited till my cousin's parents came back home. We told them the story and everything that happened. To this day, I am not sure what was going on that night, but up until now, nothing like that has ever happened again. This took place in June of 2021. This was the day I was going to explore an abandoned city near my area. Of course, I was not going to go alone, so my cousin came along. This was a 3-hour drive from where I lived. We ended up arriving at the spot around 3 p.m. on a Saturday. We quickly looked up some history and facts about the lost village. Turns out, in the year 1845, a rich man bought hundreds of acres of land. He then used all of this land to build a small village where around 150 people used to live. In the year 1860, He retired, and nobody wanted to take over the property and land. Therefore, the area became abandoned ever since. Now this is the part where it gets scary. The woods around the abandoned area is called the Witch's Forest. This is because there are rumors of Satanists and witch rituals taking place at night. There is the famous story where 3 girls entered the woods one day. They wanted to go camping, but they never returned. Their bodies were never found, but many people believe their spirits are still roaming around the area. Many people also reported seeing faces in the scary-looking abandoned houses. The sudden change in temperature and immediate urges to leave the woods are enough to scare anybody. But that did not stop my cousin and I. We easily found a small path in the woods that led us straight to the small cemetery. This is where the people that once lived in the city were buried. We carefully made our way around the cemetery and continued on the path, leading us deeper into the woods. At some point, I looked behind, towards the cemetery, and I thought I saw a shadow of a person following us. I told my cousin to look, but he could not see anything. So we both just blamed it on the fact that I was probably just seeing things. After a couple more minutes, we made it to a clearing where we had to climb a very steep hill in order to reach the area. We knew this was the right way because we Googled a way to get there before we started walking on this path. Googling the area became very important because my cousin and I had no more cell service this deep in the woods. At this point, I started carefully hiking up the steep hill. After about 10 minutes, we made it up the steep hill and reached the deep woods. This is when I saw the first abandoned house in the city. The thing about this city is that there was a lot of property, meaning the houses were very spread out throughout the woods. This made it difficult for anyone who tried to explore the abandoned city. The first house was very old and broken down, with the roof about to fall off the house. My cousin suggested we try to find a way to get into the house. So we climbed over the broken rubble on the ground to get closer to the building. We both searched for a way in, but everything was boarded up really well, leading us to continue on our way in search of a different house. As we continued taking different paths in the woods, we came upon an abandoned church. This was part of the city during the 1800s. The church looked like it was in decent shape, and the grass growing around it really made it look like something out of a movie or video game. After some time, we found a small looking house, in which we did find a way in. I tried the doorknob to the house, but it did not open. When my cousin tried the doorknob, it opened. So we walked inside. It was dark, but when my eyes adjusted to the light, we could see a bunch of trash and food in one of the rooms in the house. I instantly knew that some homeless man or something was living in this house. I quickly told my cousin that we should leave the house, as I did not want to risk anything. This time, we walked deeper in the woods on this small path that led to a smaller house. This one was more secluded from the others. As we approached the house, we could see a shattered window, which was just tall enough for us to squeeze through. That's exactly what we did. I carefully made my way to the shattered window and climbed inside. Once inside, I turned on my flashlight and looked around. By this time, my cousin climbed into the house. The light illuminated the different broken items in the house. The second floor of the house looked like it was caving in and about to fall through. Also, you could literally see the old dust floating through the house. As I moved my flashlight, I stumbled across a small cellar area. I slowly walked inside the cellar and looked around. There was not much in there, just some shelves, but there was a door that was slightly open. Since I was curious, I slowly opened the door and shined my flashlight inside. In the corner of the room, I saw a rocking chair, but across the room, in the other corner, there was a man standing there, looking at me, all confused. I instantly got a rush of adrenaline, shutting the door and telling my cousin to run out of the abandoned house. He quickly climbed outside the window. At that same time, I heard a door that I just closed slam open. I knew I was being chased, so I ran and jumped out the window. Somehow, I luckily landed on a soft patch of ground, so I was not hurt. My cousin and I both ran away from that abandoned house. I only looked behind me once both my cousin and I reached a clearing in the woods. Luckily, we were not being chased, so we paused to catch our breath. That was when I realized that we were lost. The path that we followed to get here was nowhere to be found. This was bad, since the sun was starting to set and it was getting dark really quick. The laughter from the trees caught my cousin and I off guard. I was confused at who made that laughter and where it was coming from. But one thing was for sure, I was not going to stick around to find out. My cousin and I decided a random direction to start running in. That's what we did for like 20 minutes. The problem was we did not end up getting to our car because we somehow reached another abandoned house. Although it was dark, we wanted to at least take a look around the house and explore. I turned on my flashlight and led the way through some broken fence. This time, I was kind of on edge about the whole situation, so I was very cautious. The crazy thing is, as I was approaching the door to the house, I happened to look up at the window. Standing there and staring at me was the same person that was in the other abandoned house. At this point, my cousin and I both decided to run in a random direction, which eventually led to the parking lot and my car. As we sped out of the woods, we could not help but think about our experience in the woods. What does not add up for me is that we must have been followed by that same person. But how?